Okay, we are live. Just to make sure everything is set up here. Waiting for people to join. If not, that is totally fine. People can join along the way. So I had asked for ideas earlier on my post, but I don't think anyone was able to get any to me. So what I decided was I'm gonna do something similar as to what I did with Jeff the Killer, and I'm gonna be doing Sonic.exe, reading of that creepypasta. And then I thought I would do Squidward Suicide, since I think someone requested that last time. So I'll do that one, and then maybe I'll do another one. Hey, Scotty, thanks for dropping by. Glad you can make it. But yeah, so I'm just going to do Sonic.exe, Squidward Suicide, maybe another one possibly. I think both of these are kind of short from what I remember, but I can't be certain. What's up, Crusader? Thanks for dropping by. But yeah, so that's what we're going to do today. I also thought about doing a reading of another creepypasta that's far less known, but I might save that for the next one. These two are definitely well known, for better, for worse. But yeah, so I read Sonic.exe like way back in 2014, and I remember, I think, liking it back then, but obviously a lot has come out about the original creator of that story, and it's just not being able to take criticism and flipping out when his story got removed originally from one of the creepypasta sites back in the day. And I believe he was actually outed as having been talking with minors, allegedly. I don't know if that was confirmed or not, but yeah. So the original author of Sonic.exe is something else. So, but I mean, that's a whole other can of worms, honestly. And some of you might know about that, but yeah, so Sonic.exe, let's pull it up. Hopefully this isn't as bad as the killer, but if it is, we'll just have fun with it. So here we go. And the author, I just looked up the author right before I went live. I think it was Hyena or something. Hyena, I can look it up later on in the stream. But yeah, obviously, just as a disclaimer, none of the work that I'm about to read is my own. It's meant for critique and stuff like that and all that good shit. So, all right, here we go. Using my Chromebook this time to read these stories, not my phone, because I think it's not good for my phone, quite frankly. So probably not good for this either. But JC the Hyena, thank you. Do you recall Faith Buddies? It's written by the same author who did Godzilla NES. And no, I don't, but I love Godzilla NES. I love that creepypasta, so I'll have to check that out. If it's by the same author, I'm sure it's good. But yeah, JC the Hyena, that's the author of Sonic.exe. Thank you, Crusader. All right, let's get into it. So, I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everyone else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. All right. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I liked how you get to explore the towns in it. Until I noticed, out of my peripheral vision, that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox as usual and left. I mean, that's what mailmen usually do, is it not? What else would they be doing? I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle. Let's just call him that, whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that because I recognized his handwriting, Though what was weird is how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy and somewhat difficult to read. Um, so, okay, if you recognize his handwriting, but then you're also saying that it's difficult to read and badly written, then how would you actually like? How would you recognize the handwriting if you're having difficulty reading it to begin with? Just something. Uh, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late, and I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me, and if you don't destroy this CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc, and you'll destroy him. But do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please, Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. Yeah, the dumbass goes on to play the game even though we told you explicitly not to play it. Let's see. Not read God. Have to look that one up. Yeah, definitely, Scotty. Read NES Godzilla or Godzilla NES. It's a very good one. It's a long story, but it's worth it. Fantastic story. Like how and why. I mean, can you actually make your writing sloppy even in a hurry or whatever? Yeah. Some friend he is, lol. Yeah. Pretty shitty fucking friend. Hey, Jennifer, what's up? Thanks for dropping in. We're just reading Sonic.exe right now. Kind of the same vein as I was reading Jeff the Killer. Just going through and talking shit about it, I guess, critiquing it. But yeah, like the best friend tells him not to play it, and then he goes ahead and fucking plays it. Fucking dumbass. And like he hasn't seen him in 2 weeks. All right. I mean, sometimes best go a bit of time without speaking or talking. Doesn't mean the friendship is in jeopardy or anything. I didn't think that a simple gaming disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Well, yeah, he sent you a letter saying that it's to not play it, like giving the red flags about it. Anyway, I looked at the disc, and it looks like any ordinary computer CDR disc, except it had black marker on it written Sonic.exe, and it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from someone else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it since I'm a big Sonic fan. Again, just disregarding what the letter said. So this character brings it upon himself for this entire story. Oh yeah. Oh God, LMAO. Yeah. Crusader Kyle, please, for the love of God, destroy this disc or he will kill you too. Tom, LOL, no, I want to play it because I love Sonic. Yeah. This character's a dumbass. Yeah, I went up, let's see, since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. The first Sonic game. I was like, this is a run-on sentence. I was like, awesome, because like I said earlier, I like the classics. And you don't need to repeat that again. You made it pretty clear in the beginning. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed start. That's how it's written, there was a split second when I saw the title image wait, what? There was a split second when I saw the title image turned into something much different. That was a badly written sentence. Something that I now consider horrifying. before cutting to black. So it's a split second image. Um, but somehow he's able to take it all in like right away, even though it's split second, which doesn't make much sense. I now consider horrifying. So why didn't you just put the game down like right then? Like the story is just like this guy getting all these fucking warnings and red flags and just continuing the game and apparently living afterwards because he's writing it. Like, uh, boy, was I wrong. It's already becoming cringe to even use that phrase. Yeah. Sonic one then, yeah, pretty much. I remember that the image looked. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. Okay, so it was a split second, but you're able to remember the image in detail, like in it, like okay. The sky had darkened. The title symbol was rusted and ruined. The Sega 1991 was now Sega 666, and the water had turned red, like blood, except it looked hyper realistic. Um, but the freakiest thing that was in that split second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding with two glowing red dots staring right at me. And his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After I cut to black, it stayed like that. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. And then another weird thing happened. The save file select from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up. And I was like, what the fuck? What's this doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed something off. You notice something off as if you haven't noticed several things that are off already. The background was the dark, cloudy sky of the bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic's CD. Okay, this is very awkwardly written, and there were only 3 save files. The music that was creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound, only it was extended and seemed to have been in reverse. Okay, and the image for the save file, where you see a preview of the level you're on, is just red static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now, I was sure that something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? You're only now sure that something is off with this game? That's when I realized that this wasn't a glitchy game, it was a hacked game. But you still go on to play it. I'm not sure someone with even an actual photographic memory can memorize this image in only a split second. Yeah, that's nonsensical. Every gaming creepypasta, this game is clearly cursed and evil and will keep me if I keep playing. Better keep playing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The fuck. It's a trope at this point. Plays Robotnik. The protagonist clearly was kicked in the head by a horse baby, or is Vince Russo's child, given how stupid he is. Probably both. Probably both. Vince Russo's, yeah, that would make sense. You know, Vince Russo thought everything he did in the wrestling world was just the greatest shit ever, and so and this author clearly thinks the story that he wrote is the greatest shit ever, so that would line up. Okay. Yeah, definitely looked hacked. It was really creepy. But as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared. Or at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game and there's nothing wrong with that. Evidently not a very smart gamer or smart person for that matter. Because you're ignoring all these red flags about it. And what if, like, if it's a hacked game, like, what if it fucks with your, game system or whatever, or if it has, like, any sort of bad shit on it. Anyways, shaked off wait, anyways, shake there's no I, it just says, anyways, shaked off the creeped out feeling I picked. Anyways, shaking off the creeped out feeling, I picked file 1, should be a comma there, and chose tails. And when I selected, and wait, fuck. I can see why this got removed for grammatical errors. Holy shit. Like, Tiki Toby had grammatical errors, but at least it was a good story. Like this. Uh, so I'm so sorry. Let me read that again. Anyways, comma, shaking off the creeped out feeling, comma, I picked file 1 and chose tails. Uh, chose tails, and when I selected and got started, that was just a bad sentence. Yeah, let's forget that. The game froze for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black. Uh, Still hasn't, said fuck this game yet. Oh, also, like, just going back for a second, shaking off the creeped out feeling. You couldn't have just written like shaking off the unease I felt, or shaking off like something like that. No, just shaking off the creeped out feeling. Like, what is a creeped out feeling? Like, what is exactly does that feel like? The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more. Then it showed the typical level title thing. Describe it maybe. Except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text showed only Hill Act 1. The screen faded in, and the level title vanished, revealing Tales in the Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. The music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Everything's in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and had Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. To the casual person, no. You could explain this again. Use some detail. Fuck. Ben Drowned is another gaming creepypasta. Yeah, Ben Drowned is actually the Ben Drowned is actually a good one. Unlike this, did his parents even take care of him? Probably not. As a smart gamer like me, Tom Sonic.exe, and you wonder why Hoodlum labeled Tom as a narcissist. I remember that. I remember that video. That's kind of why I wanted to do this one, because I thought of Hoodlum's video. Yeah, Tom is a jackass, and I mean, it's clearly a self-insert, of the author. Let's see. So I started running when. What was odd was that his tail long level was. God damn it! What was odd was that his tails was running along, comma. The level there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. There should be a period after that. That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow, deep tones. Very slowly. As you established that it was slow already, you don't need to put very slowly. As I kept going. Oh my fucking god. I suddenly saw something and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground, bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I never saw him have before. So I had him move along, and he kept that worried look on his face. Why would you have seen that look on his face before? As he kept moving, I saw more dead animals. His tail moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers, and he moves. moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers and he moves. Fuck, again, with the tenses, like, decide whether you want it to be past tense or present tense. Just, you can't jump from one to the other. It's jarring. It takes the reader out of the story. Fuck. Uh, I was shocked to see how they all died. They looked like somebody killed them in rather gruesome ways. A squirrel, a squirrel was hanged on a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A squirrel was hung on a tree. Whatever. A bunny had all four of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few more seconds, there were no more animals, and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue. Again, like, it doesn't occur to Tom to, like, be like, yeah, I think there's something wrong here. I should probably heed my best friend's warning and stop playing and get and like destroy this disc or whatever. Like, and then all of the like extreme like graphic details about the animals. Like, I'm not offended by it. I've read some pretty graphic stuff. I've read American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis, so like not much phases me after reading that book. But the, you can't give us details about, you know, the games and stuff for people again who aren't like super familiar with the games and stuff like that. But you can give us details about like the animals having their throats slit and stuff like that. I yeah, whatever. Um after a minute passed after a minute passed after the music stopped. Okay. Tail was running up a hill and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. What? Wait. What the fuck? This is about to break my fucking brain. Oh, fuck. I'm convinced the entire time the author was writing this, he was typing with one hand and having himself a little party with his other hand, if you know what I mean. Ugh. A big part why is because the creepypasta Bendrown is just a small part of a bigger arc. Wouldn't his face be pixeled? Yeah, you would think that should be. I want to do a drinking game for every time the word hyper realistic is used for this copy pasta. Yeah. Yeah, that probably wouldn't that'd go pretty badly. Yeah, stop playing the game. This oh my god. Like the run-on sentences and the lack of grammar and just the bad writing. It's really starting to annoy me. Uh, I'm gonna try to read. Okay, so after a minute passed. Okay, so it should be after a minute passed, the music stopped. Not after a minute passed after the music stopped. You don't need to put after twice. So after a minute passed after the music stopped, comma, Tails was running up a hill and then he stopped. Comma. It wasn't until I saw why. It wasn't until what? Until what? Sonic was there on the other side of the screen with his back against Tails with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered, obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him. If not acting as if he was totally oblivious of Tails' presence. Uh, okay. Tails walked slowly towards Sonic, and I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this had to have been a cutscene. Suddenly, I began to have a growing feel. That's how it's written. a growing feel of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. Uh, there should there should be a period, but there's a comma. I felt that Tails was in danger, and something bad was going to happen. I heard faint static growing louder as Tails was but inches away from Sonic and stopped and stuck his hand out to touch him. Um, touch him where? That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as the static grew louder. How would you? Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open and they were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image, though there wasn't a smile. And when that happened, the screen turned black and the static sound was off. Uh, it stayed black for about 7 seconds. And then white text appeared, forming a message saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point, I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me when I was taken to a different level with the level title now saying hide and seek. Obviously, you weren't creeped out enough. And again, at any point, does he think back to the letter his friend sent him? Any point at all. He's a smart gamer, though, guys. Smart gamer, whatever the fuck that means. Uh, this time I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the fourth wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down the arrow key as hard as I could and made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme when you meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from SA2 was playing as I made Tails trek through the desolate forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. This is a lot worse because I read this almost 9 years ago. Over 9 years ago, actually. This is so bad. Suddenly, I heard that creepy laugh again, that awful Kefka laugh. Right after 10 seconds have passed as I helped, right after 10 seconds have passed as I helped Tails run through the forest, and then I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere on the screen. What, Sonic was popping? Like, popping and like exploding all over the screen, or he was popping up everywhere on the screen. Again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful, drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining up on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic's CD. Okay, except it was just Sonic and he had the black and red eyes again, only this time he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox as he gained up on him. I mean, he keeps making all these references to like other games or other games in the series, and he expects everyone to like just be automatically familiar and know without going into detail about any of it. Like he's depending on the idea that everyone has actually played, the series and stuff, when a lot of people probably haven't. A lot of people might be just casual, or maybe they might not even be like Sonic fans. It's fucking lazy writing. And again, you already established that he has a deranged grin on his face from before. Like, stop playing the game. No cutscene in Sonic games. Oh man, I almost feel bad because the author later on was shown to have like no self-awareness. I almost feel bad, but like at the same time, Like, I've done a little bit of writing here and there, like, nothing that I've published or anything, but, like, when I was in college, I did some, like, took creative writing class and stuff. And, like, my stories weren't perfect, but, like, I at least made sure to try to, like, maintain a consistent tense in the story and, like, make sure that it was mostly grammatically correct. Like, this, the author just didn't do any of that at all. There was no effort put into editing or anything like that. It just, you know. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch, and I kind of teared up myself. Okay. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down those blackened eyes of Sonic's as a grin slowly grew from his face as he looked down at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went black. Uh, there was a loud screeching noise that only lasted 5 seconds. The text returned, only this time it said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" And then that god awful laugh came with it. I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? I shook the shock off as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen itself. Uh, but in the TV screen, it's okay. Which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding. His orange fur had gone black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Should be a period. Trying to ignore, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came again, and the screen cut to black again and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time, the level said, "You can't run." A lot of things cutting to black. I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch or a hack or some kind of sick, twisted joke or anything really. But didn't you come to the conclusion that it was hacked earlier? Uh, But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. Oh my god, Tom is fucking retarded. Not played the Sonic. Yeah. Not turning the game off. The story's breaking me. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the Scrap Brain zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark reddish cloudy sky, but it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Giga's theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did, though not as much. More rather, he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked as if he wasn't sure about going on. But I made him move anyway. So you saw what happened to Tails, and like you don't think the same thing is going to happen to like Knuckles. He ran down the straight pathway in this dark level. And as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple times, and then that maddening laugh came again. Oh, man. There's only so many ways you can, like, describe this laugh. And then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible was going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated, walking down this bloodstained road, but I still kept going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes, and then red static appeared again. when the static vanished, showing nothing but black screen with text saying, "Found you." I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, red static came again, then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time, that high pitched squealing from the Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Okay. Like, you could use your own descriptions of what the laughs sound like just using references to other video games and other series entirely. Again, it's lazy writing. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. It's all fucking pixelated. I made Knuckles turn and then punched Sonic again, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke. You've established that it's pixelated. We know it's pixelated. Stop repeating yourself. Before I could even land a hit, that terrible laugh went off again. And then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and then I made him punch again, and Sonic vanished again, laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more, and even I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. You think? I wouldn't have guessed. Another cutscene played as Knuckled. That's how it's written, Knuckled. Another cutscene played as Knuckled fell to his knees and clutched his head, sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles and the screen went black with another distorted screeching noise that lasted for at least 3 seconds. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with, so little time. Would you agree? What the hell? Just what is going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second file box had Knuckles on the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. And he had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think that those are the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap. Wish I hadn't, because then I began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets to you." Their cries died out as I then heard Sonic laugh. His laugh. It sounded like distorted. You've said what it sounds like several times. It's just so fucking derivative at this point. You're a lot of fun to play with, kid, just like your friend Kyle, though he didn't last long. I was scared and looking around for the source of the voice. You know, that dialogue, knowing what we might know about the author now, that really doesn't fucking age well. That's kind of disturbing. And I would want to give the author the benefit of the doubt, but dude sexted minors when he was in his 20s. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. So yeah, the dialogue there. You were fun to play with, kid. That doesn't. Knowing that is just disturbing. It does not age well at all. I was scared and looking around for the source of the voice. It won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends. For fuck's sake. I saw him walk toward me, flickering in and out in several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now, just like the others. When he grabbed me and I saw his bleeding black and red-eyed, grinning face, I woke up with a fright. After a couple of hours, I decided to continue playing the game. Fucking moron. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky, playing as Robotnik. But anyway, the level title appeared again, and this time it said dot dot dot, which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it has the pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were a dark grayish purple with animated candle lights and a few dark bloodstains here and there. And there was a dark red curtain hanging above on the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, that red curtain sways very slowly. The fucking tenses again. But whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant, a piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song. But I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face as if he was just a bit paranoid. I wonder fucking why. He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turns his head to the left and then to the right at least twice and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation. You know, when you've beaten him at the end of a classic Sonic game and you chase him. Like I've said before, as we continued going through the hallway. And then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downward. Now I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and more reddish. More reddish. The red torches are now an eerie blue. What exactly is an eerie blue? How is blue eerie? Then we landed onto another hallway. This one longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs. And then we headed down another flight of stairs down. We headed down another flight of stairs. That's all you need. This one was much longer. Took at least one full minute. And then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again, and then the music slowly faded until it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned more dark red. And the torches were a black flame now. I mean, aren't the walls already dark red? Turned more dark red. Don't put more. When Robotnik landed onto the third hallway, I noticed he now looked really creeped out. Though he tried to hide it, I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly, Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik, the same way he did Knuckles and then Red Static. The Red Static blast lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it slowed, and then it showed me a most unpleasant image. The image showed ready for this? A hyper-realistic of Sonic standing in the darkness where you can only see his face while his head and torso faded into black. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean like he looked so... Oh my God. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean like he looked so real you could actually see the lines in his blue fur. As if you could actually feel the fur if you touched the screen. I should be reading this in like a Valley Girl voice. I mean, like, he looked so real, you could actually see the lines in his blue fur. Fuck. His face. Oh God, he had the most horrifying smile I had ever seen. And that's saying something considering I saw that image at the start of the game. His eyes his eyes are wide and black and once again crying blood, which also looked hyper realistic. And there were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me. Where else would they be staring? As if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs. Much like the Werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking. Somewhat yellowish. And from the look of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs as if he ate some animal. Yeah, no shit. You saw what happened with fucking Tails earlier. What I stared at that gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. Ah, it took 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the third time I heard the Kefka laugh. Except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. Oh, fuck. Like, does he saying demonic, distorted, whatever? It doesn't add anything. It's just more repetition. He's already used those descriptors multiple times in the story. Does he think it'll like nail the horror and the suspense and the creepiness and more by doing that? It went back to the image again, except this time there was the text again, though it was messed up. How was it messed up? But it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game. Out of all the other horrifying shit you've seen, you mean? Oh, fuck. It's open season. It just means it's open season to bully the weirdo. Yeah. Robotic is the main bad guy in the games. Yeah. Hyper realistic. Yeah, it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game. I am God. How is that one of the most horrifying things? It was when I read the message while looking at Sonic, when it hit me, I realized right there and then. While looking at Sonic, when it hit me, I realized right. No. This Sonic was a monster, a pure evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. That's just now fucking hitting you. Oh my fucking god. You're just summing up the conclusion that we've already come to. You don't need to spell it out for the reader. The reader isn't stupid. And all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, your best friend, the one that told you not to play the fucking game, are just his little toys, and the game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a literally spiraling abyss of pure darkness before the red static came again. A literally spiraling abyss, you guys. This time much louder and distorted. So loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. That was one sentence. That was all one. This whole paragraph was one sentence. Oh my fucking god. Then it stopped and showed nothing but black screen. Nothing but a black screen. Uh, as I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. Ready for round two, Tom? The Kefka laugh, now sounding more clear as if Sonic was right behind me, played again 3 times as I looked at that text in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time the third save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned a dull gray, his mustache drooped and had blackened, his glasses broke, and blood is coming from them. And he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. What is a dead-like expression? Just say dead expression, at the very least. A mere dead-like expression. Okay. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they're going through. You literally put them through that. You put them through it. They were forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and always will be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. Oh my God. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what had just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one. And then when he gets bored, he drags you into the game and literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you always as his toy. Like we didn't get that through all of this. Five Nights at Freddy ending. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there, but at least I managed to turn it back on now. And it stops summing everything up. Like, it's the classic show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. You don't need to tell us shit. After I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me. Like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream. All ready for this, guys? Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling with blood stains under its eyes. And that's the end. Yeah, so out of all the shit that was in that game, the thing that made him scream was a fucking Sonic plushie. Yeah. Fuck. That was bad. Like I knew it was cringy, but I forgot how bad it was. What the fuck? Man, that was a battle of attrition just reading that. I think it broke my brain a little bit. And the worst part about it was that the author actually thinks it's some sort of masterpiece. Oh my God. It almost makes 50 Shades of Grey look like actual good writing. Almost. Not a plushie. Yeah, a plushie. So fucking threatening. Oh my God. But yeah, JC the Hyena. That's who is credited with this story. What the fuck? I'm clicking on his page right now. He's got like artwork and stuff. Yeah. God damn. Well, yeah, that was bad. That was fucking awful. Hopefully, I don't know how old. Like, I don't know. Well, not how old, but like, I don't know what Hyena is up to nowadays. But I hope that maybe he's done some self reflecting. I mean, judging by his reaction to his story being taken off of the site, or one of the, again, back in the day, and moved to a site dedicated to the, or I think it was either a different site or it was the same site, but it was taken down. It was, the story was removed from the part with like the actual like good, well written stories, because because it was so popular. It was in that section for a long while, but then it was moved to like a section dedicated for like bad creepypastas, like badly written creepypastas and stuff like that. And he had the infamous freak out. Uh, so I mean, judging by that reaction again, I doubt it. But hopefully, maybe he's done some like reflecting and stuff and realized that, yeah, that was kind of a asshole thing of me to do. I probably should have just listened to criticism a little bit more. Uh, yeah, yeah. I went to. He's got a page on here. Apparently, he's got like 368 people who follow him for whatever reason, and he's advertising like a Patreon on here as well. The fuck. But yeah. Oh, man. I'm reading some of the God damn. He made a post. Um, there are profile comments on his profile on here, and there's like people just like absolutely ripping into him. It's funny. What the fuck? Fucking cringe, dude. All right, so that was Sonic.exe. So let's yeah, reading some comments on so there's a he's got a page, like a, or it's well, it was a link to his DeviantArt page. That's what it is, a DeviantArt page. Sir JC Hyena 231. Um, and it's got this like, it's got artwork. I think it's like a fursona, I guess, or something. Uh, but yeah, it's just, and I guess he's got subscribers or whatever the fuck he would have on DeviantArt, but I don't have an account. I've never been on it, honestly. But yeah, there are comments just ripping into him, so you can go to that. Just go to the creepypasta and then go to his DeviantArt page. It's hilarious. But yeah, so should we read I guess we'll get into Squidward's suicide next. Hopefully that holds up better. All right. Though, if I remember correctly, I think in Squidward's suicide we get the hyper realistic description. I could be wrong, but after reading that story, I really don't want to hear hyper realistic as a description for a good long while. Again, just using phrases over and over again because you can't come up with a different phrase. It's just bad writing. All right. I just need to take a drink. I think I wish I had some alcohol on me while reading that. Because that was fucking awful. At least Jeff the Killer was like Jeff the Killer is also bad. Like, they're both bad, but like Sonic.exe is almost worse in a way. Just because of the author. So Yeah, let's just get into Squidward suicide. All right. Uh, I just want to start off by saying if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There just isn't one. I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't. But it did have some perks beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would shit themselves over it. Now, since I worked directly with the editors and animators, I got to view the new episodes days before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie, and the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up the season. But the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months. Me and two other interns were in the editing room along with the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut. We received the copy that was supposed to be Fear of a Krabby Patty and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that it isn't final yet, animators often put up a mock title card, sort of an inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles, such as How Sex Doesn't Work, instead of Rockabye Bivalve, when SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop. Nothing particularly funny, but work related chuckles. So when we saw the title card Squidward Suicide, we didn't think it more than a morbid joke. So this is already better than Sonic.exe. You know, the grammar's way better. The right, it's automatically first few paragraphs already 1,000 times better. Okay. One of the interns did a small throat laugh at it. The happy-go-lucky music plays as is normal. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside, and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubble splash screen comes up, and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things began to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't. At this point, sound is synced up with animation, so yes, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as if the skip never happened. There is slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame and looks visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd, with SpongeBob in center frame, and he too is booing, very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing, though. What is odd is everyone had hyper-realistic eyes. Fuck that phrase again. Like, so far, the story is fine with how it's written and stuff, but I really don't want to read hyper-realistic again. Yeah, I definitely agree. You haven't cringe. Yeah. Uh, let's say, yeah, I did fucking hyper realistic. Very detailed. Clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused. But since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of his porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is at this point there is no sound. Literally no sound. Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off, though their status showed them working perfectly. He just sat there, blinking, in the silence for about 30 seconds. Then he started to sob softly. He put his hands, tentacles, over his eyes and cried quietly. Sorry, excuse me. Rewind, back up. He put his hands, tentacles, over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more, all the while a sound in the background very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart side by side. His sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit, as if it twists in on itself for a split second, then back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets slowly louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is the sound, and Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as if the speakers were holes the sound was coming through from the other side. As good as sound as the studio likes to have, they don't purchase the equipment to be that good to produce sound of that quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you had a hard time pinning it. We watched the show twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I've had time to think about them. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. The face was mangled and bloodied, one eye dangling over his upturned face, popped. He was naked down to his underwear, his stomach crudely cut open and his entrails laying beside him. He was laying on some pavement that was probably a road. So again, I haven't read this story or listened to it for a long, long time, but I'm wondering what the purpose of that is, of including the purpose of the dead child photo in the story. Like, is it? I don't know if it's just for shock value, for the sake of it, or if it actually relates to anything. Just wondering. So far, I mean, the story is fine. That again, much better than Sonic.exe, obviously. But I'm just wondering, like, it almost seems as if it's just in there for shock value right now. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Continue reading. The most upsetting part was that there was a shadow of the photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem the photographer was the person responsible for the child's death. We were, of course, mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke. Knowing what we know about how, like, not just Nickelodeon, like the entire like entertainment industry as a whole, obviously, like Hollywood and shit. But yeah, just knowing how many predators there are and that we know that there are of in Nickelodeon, that's pretty horrifying. Because honestly, like, who knows what goes on behind the scenes. I'm not saying that, like, that a child has been killed by any executives or producers or anything, but just saying, like, how many stories have we heard of child stars getting taken advantage of time and time again by people who work in that industry? The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing, louder than before, and half body and frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper realistic style. Yeah, fucking hyper realistic. Looking as if you touched it, you'd get blood on your fingers. So, why not just say, like, the blood was very, very realistic, or that like it was so realistic that it like popped, just something like that. Other than hyper realistic, the wind sounded now as if it were that of a gale blowing through the forest. There were even snapping sounds of branches, the laughing, a deep baritone, lasting at longer intervals and coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were, but he knew he had to. This time, the photo was that of what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach, her barrettes in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was too popped out and popped. Um, Probably shouldn't use popped twice like that, but whatever. Um, Naked except for the underpants. Her entrails were piled on top of her above another crude cut along her back. Again, the body was on the street, and the photographer's shadow was visible. Very similar in size and shape to the first. I had to choke back vomit, and one intern, the only female in the room, ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after the second photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all sounds, like it was when the scene started. He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now done in hyper realism, like the others were in the beginning of this episode. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. Bleeding, bloodshot, and I don't think you don't need to use bleeding and bloodshot as descriptions in the same sentence. That's just repetitive. If the eyes are bleeding, then it's safe to assume the eyes are probably bloodshot. He just stared at the screen, as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and most fear-inducing of all is his sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dropping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep-voiced laughing. And this time the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed up. This time the photo was of a boy, about the same age, but this time the scene was different. The entrails were just being pulled out from a stomach wound by a large hand. The right eye popped and dangling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. It was hard to believe, but the next one was different, but we couldn't tell what. That's kind of a weird sentence there. Hey, what's up, Rhodes? Thanks for stopping by. Take a shot when you hear the word hyper-realistic. Fuck. Yeah, if we were all to take shots of vodka every time we have heard the phrase hyper-realistic so far, we would all be fucking dead-ass fucking drunk. It's ridiculous. Doesn't sound like this is kid friendly. I don't think so. Let's see. He went on to the next, same thing. He went back to the first and played them quicker, and I lost it. I vomited on the floor, the animating and sound editors gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different photos. They were played out as if they were frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out the guts. We saw the kid's eyes focus on it, and we even saw 2 frames of the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call on the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused as to why he was called down there, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the few frames were shown, all screaming, all sound stopped again. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, full frame of the face, for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and that deep voice said, "Do it." And we see in Squidward's hands a shotgun. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed, and he flies back with the force. The last 5 seconds of this episode shows his body on the bed, on his side, one eye dangling on what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg is obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the hell was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and caused me horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think of was the file was edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here. The CTO was called in to analyze what happened. The analysis of the file did show it was edited over by new material. However, the timestamp of it was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware as well as glitches, as if the timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened, and to this day, nobody does. This was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but there was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No child scene was identified, and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues in the photos. I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before, but now that I have something happen and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. All right. And that's the end. That was shorter than I remembered. This is still a SpongeBob episode, right? Yeah, I believe so. Or it's supposedly is, anyways. But yeah, that was the end of that one. I could have sworn it was longer, but I guess not. But that was refreshing after Sonic.exe. I didn't like seeing hyper-realistic used again. That was kind of annoying. And again, like the stuff with the dead children seemed a little bit. It's not that it like offends. It's not that it's too much for me. It's just that what is the purpose other than to shock and horrify for the sake of shock? Like what purpose does it serve for the episode? That's my only thing. But I mean, other than that, it's a good story. Good, creepy little story. But yeah, the X out of Sonic.exe goes, fuck that. But yeah. Sonic.exe would definitely be at the bottom of the barrel for me. It would be at the same with Jeff the Killer. Unfortunately, I think it's probably one of the most, just like Jeff the Killer, it's one of the most popular, or at least the more well-known creepypastas out there, even though it's very, very lacking in quality. But yeah, supposedly there's an actual episode out there. So, or there might actually be. I don't know, but that's the theory, anyways. So I don't know. I might. I'm going for an hour and 13 or hour and 19 minutes now. Maybe I could do one more, possibly. Perhaps because there is one that I was actually a fan of, and again, this one like isn't nearly as well known or popular, but I felt like I could um, do that one as well, and just same general idea. Sorry about that. Give me just a second here. All right. So I think what I'll do is I'll do one more. I'll do one more reading if that's all right with everyone. Um, and then I'll go ahead and call it a stream for the night. But so far, I mean, this has been one wacky stream so far. The Sonic.exe was fucking insane. Like I again, I seriously wish that I had had like some alcohol. And again, like I've said, like take a shot every time hyper realistic gets used as a descriptor. It's fucking crazy. Okay. So the one I wanted to do a reading of was called the Colorado Fishing Trip. It's one that I found like many years ago, but I've went back and like I've read it several times or listened to it several times, and I thought that it really held up. But I figured I'd do a reading of it now, and we can see if it still holds up, or I can see if it still holds up, and you guys can see how you feel about it. So we'll go ahead and get into it. The author, I believe it says right here, is Liam Vickers. So credit goes to him. And once again, obviously, the story is not my own, all that good shit. So, Squidward's suicide felt edgy. Yeah, it felt like edgy for the sake of being edgy at times. I do like the story. I think it's good. But like again, the stuff with the dead children and stuff, it did feel edgy for the sake of being edgy at certain times. That was kind of my issue with it. That and it used hyper realistic as a descriptor. Probably not good to read that one right after reading Sonic.exe. But I would definitely rank Squidward's suicide above Sonic.exe. And again, like the history with the author doesn't make it any better; it makes it worse. So knowing what we know about him now, or at least allegedly. So all right, so I'll do this one, and then I'll go ahead and end the stream after that. All right, so this is the Colorado fishing trip. Our trip started in late February as my three friends, John, Steve, Max, and I, drove my truck deep into the backwoods of Boxwood Gulch to follow the North Fork of the South Plateau River. Steve owned a cabin up in the back country, so we left my truck there and began our 57-mile hike into the wooded terrain following the river. We had all of our camping and fishing gear packed and enough food to hopefully last the 3-day journey both ways. The pre-spawn bass wouldn't be an easy catch once we reached the hole, but if we were going to endure this brutal cold, we wouldn't go home without a fight. As we first set out in the early morning, a few light snowflakes began to fall. The terrain was heavily wooded and uneven, making for slow going, but the cool mountain air rustled through the trees, and sunlight streamed through the canopy, making the snowflakes glint and shimmer as birds chirped overhead. It was going to be a near perfect trip. We stopped for a quick rest a few hours in. The weather had been slowly worsening since we had left, but it was only then that we realized how bad it had really gotten. The snow was whipping around us in a blinding flurry as the wind howled. The crooked, mangled trees creaked and swayed violently, almost threatening to snap in two. The ground had already accumulated a good 6 inches of snow. It was about midday, but the sky was black. And I don't mean dark due to the ever intensifying storm. I mean that in between the gaps in the clouds, there was no blue, just solid black. None of us really made a note of it at the time, as it was hard to notice through the thick cascade of snow and the limited visibility. After continuing our hike for some time, however, it became all too apparent that something was wrong. In addition to the sky, we also realized that there was nothing in the distance. There should have been some mountains or something like that, like there had been at the start, but no matter which way we turned, the world only seemed to extend 50 or so feet around us. Then it disappeared into the blizzard. It was nighttime now, or at least it was dark out. My watch, however, read 2 in the afternoon. As we walked forward, new things slowly came into view, but everything behind us disappeared, and although we could progress further, we couldn't seem to double back. Once we left something behind us, we couldn't reach it again. Steve had forgotten his lighter a little while back when we stopped to eat, but when we tried to turn around and go back, we were greeted by a wall of snow and fog impossible to see through. Our flashlight's beams didn't penetrate the fog. They stopped as they hit it as if it was a physical wall. Tendrils of vapor danced across the indistinct surface, and the gray void behind it seemed to extend into eternity. Curious, Steve slowly reached out and moved his hand into the fog. First, his fingertips disappeared, and then his whole hand vanished into the haze. We all stood in disbelief, looking at the wall, which was impossibly tall and extended as far as we could see. There was no real gradient to it. Things didn't fade into the distance. There was a clear line where the wall began, and nothing was visible beyond that point. We were making a note of all this when Steve muttered something. "What was that?" I asked. I, he stammered. I can't feel my hand. He said this slowly, as if realizing it as he said it. Puzzled, he retracted his hand slowly and then screamed. His glove was shredded, almost disintegrated, and his hand looked like it had been forced through a wood chipper. Deep gashes revealed white bone underneath, and what fingers were left were stripped clean. We all panicked. Oh God, this is bad," Max cried. Steve simply stood clutching what was left of his hand and hyperventilating. We had to get him to a hospital or he would certainly bleed to death. But we were almost a day's walk from Steve's cabin, which was already remote enough. We were all frantically checking our phones for a signal when the worst happened. Steve fainted. His eyes closed, his legs buckled, and he fell forward into the fog. None of us noticed at first, but when we finally did, all we could see were his legs protruding from the mist. We immediately, without thinking, rushed to pull him out. We grabbed his legs and strained to drag him back into view. Before we even saw him, however, we immediately regretted doing so. We somehow knew what we would find. The thing we dragged out was not Steve. Not anymore. All of his skin was cleaved off, his rib cage ripped open with his entrails spilling out. and his face instantly burned into my vision, becoming an after image that haunts me to this day. Not merely because it was horrendously mutilated, not merely because his eyes had been torn out, leaving only empty sockets, but because it smiled at me. A big, wide smile that started small, but the gashes in his face allowed it to literally stretch from ear to ear. Max screamed and shoved Steve's mangled body back into the fog. We ran as fast as we could, the only way we could, deeper into the woods. Just as before, the snow and fog parted before us, but swallowed up everything we left behind. As we ran and ran, the scenery around us began to slowly change. The trees surrounding us were now withered and dead. The grass was flattened and bleached white. In fact, everything around us was lifeless and dull. Colors had all but disappeared, leaving only shades of gray and an intensified feeling of loneliness and death. Guys, I shouted while I ran, not daring to stop for even a minute. We can't turn around and go straight back, but maybe we could circle around back to Steve's cabin. Then we can get to the truck and get the hell out of here. John and Max nodded their heads, and we turned a 90 degrees right and continued running. Eventually, we ran through what appeared to be a herd of deer, all of which were laying on the ground, gray and lifeless, hacked to pieces, blood-soaked with snow-covered ground. As we ran through the herd, dodging corpses, it was hard not to notice that their dead, lifeless eyes seemed to follow us. Give me just a second. When we felt confident enough that we wouldn't be doubling back on ourselves, we turned towards Steve's cabin, towards safety. We ran for at least another hour. Eventually, however, none of us could run any longer. Our bodies simply wouldn't allow it, and we were forced to stop. After some time, Max, John, and I managed to get a fire going despite the snow and damp tinder. We had hoped that it would bring some sense of warmth and security, but we were wrong. The flames were a bright orange hue, bleeding some color into the grayscale world. It clearly did not belong, nor did we. The longer the flames crackled and popped, the more we began to hear something. Distant and quiet at first, but slowly growing closer, louder, and more numerous. A chorus of blood-curdling wails and moans soon filled the stagnant air around us. Focused on the fire and pretending to be safe, mesmerized by its beauty, we didn't immediately notice a mangled deer carcass slowly dragging itself out of the fog and into view. Nor did we notice the sound, nor the third. All right. So they basically just stumbled into another dimension, it sounds like. But, yeah, this is... so far, this is holding up pretty well. This is as good as I remember it being. I personally like it anyways. And I appreciate that we haven't stumbled across hyper-realistic. And I don't remember that being in this story. So that's an automatic plus. Finally, we snapped out of our trance just in time to scramble to our feet in terror as a myriad of different animal carcasses clambered out of the fog, drawn to the strange light of the fire. We were intruders in their world. I was paralyzed by fear, unable to breathe. The corpses moved with a surreal and broken haphazard toss of limbs, as if poorly animated puppets. I turned to my friends to find that they were no longer beside me. They had taken off running, leaving me behind. I turned to run after them, but something grabbed me by my shoulder. I didn't need to turn around to know what it was. I could tell by the hand gripping my shoulder. Hand that looked as though it had gone through a wood chipper. I flailed and managed to free myself before it could get a good grip on me and took off running. I didn't look back. No way did I want to see that face of what was once my friend. I could no longer see John or Max, and I assumed that they must have been ahead of me. But I was the one with the keys to the truck, and Steve had the keys to the cabin. They wouldn't be any safer if I couldn't meet up with them, so I ran faster and for longer than any human could possibly do under normal circumstances. Finally, after God knows how long. I could faintly make out a structure in the distance. It was the cabin. I felt a twinge of hope. The wails continued to ring out in the night air, but I seemed to have a lead on them at a time. I reached the truck, unlocked it, and jumped inside. I scanned the area for Max or John, but could see neither. I couldn't just leave them, but I couldn't wait forever either. I sat sweating and shaking nervously as the wails grew louder and closer. I had just about made up my mind to leave when I could suddenly make out someone sprinting towards me. It looked like Max. I started up the truck and motioned for him to run faster. But for some reason, I found myself subconsciously pressing the switch to my left, locking all the doors. My instinct told me that something was wrong. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking like crazy. I looked back up, and Max's horribly mutilated face was pressed up against the driver's window, staring at me, smiling. He was trying to open the door. I slammed my foot on the gas and drove off, shaking like a madman and holding back the vomit. As I drove home, the sky slowly brightened back up into a blue hue, and I could eventually see the sun breaking through the clouds. It was 9 in the morning. I began to see other cars on the road, and the people inside waved at me as I waved at them. Nice, normal people. I went straight home and asked my girlfriend to marry me. I'm sorry. That's just not true. I'm sitting in my house now, door locked and barricaded, windows boarded up, and I'm writing the story. And I felt happy for the first time in a long time writing that ending. I hardly even remember what a blue sky looks like, but I just wanted to picture it in my mind one last time. I just needed to imagine a happier world, because in reality, that's not how it ended. The truth is, I drove. As I drove, the sky did not brighten up. The sun did not reappear, and the fog still surrounded me as it now surrounds my house. I hear wailing all around and knocks on my door constantly. And when I look through the peephole, all I ever see is something smiling at me. The stench of death is everywhere. The phone doesn't work. The TV and radio broadcast nothing but static. I hear the locks on my door being undone at night, and I must constantly keep watch and relock them. I'm simply waiting for the night they get into my house when I forget to check the door, or when they break through a window, or when I wake up in the middle of the night to see them next to me. Their smiles, inches away from my face. All right, that is the end of that one. I I personally like that one. There are a few things that probably could be explained a little bit better, but overall, I think it's a fun little scary story. I've just always liked that one. Obviously, that's a uh, not a very well known creepypasta, but um, yeah. So, and then obviously the author again is Liam Vickers, but yeah. So yeah, I'm reading the comments. Apparently, this was on Crappy Pasta. Really? Okay. All right. So that was Colorado fishing trip. And then I don't know if anyone is even still here at this point, but I think I will go ahead and probably end it here. But obviously, I appreciate anyone who dropped by, and thanks for watching. This was fun as usual. I might try to do, well, not might, but I don't know. You guys should give me some ideas as to what creepypasta I should read next in the next live stream. So, yeah. Thank you for everyone who stopped by. and I will go ahead and end it here. So, all y'all have a good day, whatever time of day it is where you're at. And that is it for this one. So, peace out.